Ultra.
Goes huge for Ultra, and they get their first home series victory.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Mini Esports. One of your hosts, Spencer. With me, as always, is Chris. And we got some Call of Duty major news to talk about. I said major news. I meant the Stage 3 major that obviously just occurred. A pretty good major overall. As well as we got a roster signing a roster change to talk about. Obviously, being MajorManiak back into the starting lineup for Minnesota. Obviously, they had a very underwhelming and disappointing performance of the major. I think one of the few teams to truly underwhelm that major. I think a lot of teams actually did the exact opposite. But with that out of the way, we'll just do a brief little recap, give our thoughts on some of the top teams and how they performed. And
talk a little bit more about Toronto too, because obviously we are a Toronto, focused podcast.
And they did well.
And they did freaking really well.
Yeah.
I am so happy with them right now. Obviously they made some small mistakes, but this is honestly for me just about as good as it could gone. But before we give you guys our analysis, please spare us a like, please.
Can we have some more? I know you guys have been sparing them on the previous videos. We'd appreciate all the likes that you can spare. And again, let us know, which teams impressed you the most at the major, which teams maybe disappointed you the most in the major. I know for me, personally, I just said Minnesota, and I think Minnesota was pretty disappointing, but I thought we'd see a better performance out of the LA Thieves. I still am not counting that team out. I think that is a team to watch going into the next stage. And I think if this goes to land, they can figure some things out. They can be a dangerous team, but I was hoping to see more from them than we actually ended up seeing.
I mean, I was also hoping to see more from Dallas too. I think we can both agree that for me, the most underperformer was Minnesota, but still I still don't think feels too big of a slouch, and they've had enough time to start gelling. So I feel like they would put up better performances than they did.
So I kind of agree. I think the issue was I don't think that the roster as it's currently constructed is the championship caliber roster that a lot of people initially anticipated with this team. Obviously, given the fact that Hook was originally there, replacing Hook with Fellow. Hook is a very tough player to replace. And I know that there was some teamwork and some chemistry issues going on there, but Hook is a legitimate superstar. So while I do agree that their top 8 performance is, I think, pretty disappointing when you consider the pedigree that Dallas should be. But when you actually look at the roster itself, it's kind of indicative of where they thought they were going to be. I would have predicted this team losing to Optic, before that game took place. Would I have thought that they would have put up more of a fight? Yeah, they did get 3-0, but at the same time, some of those maps were close. So I agree that it was an underwhelming performance, especially when you look at it as top 8. But when you consider the fact that they got beat by a really good Red Hot Optic team, I didn't hate the performance as much as some other people maybe did.
I mean, yeah, but still, I know Hook plays a big part, but I don't know. It's just whatever.
I do agree that you would have liked to have seen a better run from the defending champions.
Take a map off of a cold Optic.
Yeah.
Not just get
Well, they'd already played versus LA Gorillas. I do think that Optic beating LA Gorillas kind of gave them some confidence.
Sails.
Yeah, but you're right. They did get 3-0 by FaZe. They get 3-0 by Optic. Obviously, losing 6 straight isn't a great look. So, yeah, I think Minnesota was the biggest disappointment because I thought that team should at the very least beat London, and they didn't. And I don't know if that's Minnesota struggling or London playing, above their potential. But obviously, Minnesota made some changes, which we'll get into a little bit later. So clearly, yeah, a little bit of both. But I did think that we'd maybe see a bit of a better look from the Thieves, and it's not that the Thieves, it's not where they lost, because obviously they got knocked out by a really talented roster, Toronto Ultra team. There's no shame in that. It's more how they lost. I think the hard point was 500 to 95 by Toronto Ultra, which again is a huge gas from Ultra, but over 2 maps to get 500 to 95, that first hard point where it was 250 to 14, something must have been going on with the servers, because even though I do think Ultra was the better team, they aren't that much better, right? That was some
and
one-sided
also
clubbing. So
it was a one-sided clubbing. Also, if there was any point that you'd say our weakest point was during at least stage 3, you'd say it would be hardpoint.
If you had to pick during stage 3, yeah, during the major it started off almost looking like search and destroy, but I agree that going into it, you're right, it would have been the hardpoint only because we were on a 12 control win streak And yeah, our Surge was so dominant from the stage 2 major and during the stage 3 group stages. But yeah, I agree that it was a big boost in confidence to see Ultra handle LA the way that they did on
Like manhandle them.
on those R points.
You know what? Let's talk a little bit more about, I guess, some of the ultra in general. So I mean, as you guys know, close 3-2 loss to FaZe, slapped around Thieves, close win versus Optic, and then
Very
another pretty close round against the FaZe.
Well, that's what it was.
Tell me
Like again, man, you guys know that I am not one to shy away from criticizing Toronto franchises when they deserve it, right? Like at the end of the day, I'll always support the Toronto franchises and what overactive media is doing there. I know, they've had their ups and downs at certain different points or at certain different franchises, but I'll always be a Toronto fan through and through. Like, we're always going to support them. But I'm not one to shy away from criticizing the teams or the organizations, I think, when they deserve it. And maybe this wasn't the championship some people were hoping for, but in my opinion, they played some phenomenal Call of Duty. There's absolutely no shame in losing to FaZe and 2 very close 5-map series. Like, all I wanted out of this roster was them to just be competitive against the best teams in the league and beat the teams that they should beat, in my opinion. And that's exactly what happened, right? They were competitive against FaZe both times. I think they should have beat LA Thieves, and they beat LA Thieves, right, with some insanely impressive hardpoint performances that put a ton of confidence in this Ultra roster. And even if they would have lost to Optic, I still would have felt good because it would have been a very close, map 5 round 11 loss. I did think that, like, with Cammy having the streaks on that round 10, they maybe should have closed out there instead of going round 11. So if we had lost round 11, I would have been like, oh, man, you know what I mean? That's a tough one given the streaks. But that's also like, man, Cammy was able to get the streaks in the first place, which was incredibly impressive. Like, they played some phenomenal Call of Duty. They then go into FaZe for the second time. I think losing that control was really tough for them in that second FaZe matchup. I think that, they were running that big win streak. And I think in order to beat a team like FaZe, you kind of got to beat them on control, even though we did beat them the first time and still lost. But that's just how good FaZe is. I would have actually wished that we would have played New York. I think we actually matched up better against New York, so I had more confidence in us beating New York than I did versus FaZe. But you know what? Third place, maybe it isn't the championship that we were hoping for, but I think it was an incredible performance from Ultra. And if you're an Ultra fan or a member of the organization or a player, like, you have nothing but I think you have nothing but to be proud of that performance overall.
Yeah, I agree. I would also say that just in general, a couple thoughts. Obviously, let's not talk about the fact that they had some really, really amazing individual performances. Yeah. There were just a couple of mistakes here and there that you could kind of see and poke out. Versus, I feel like just on the Insight side, let's not deny the fact that he is an amazing potential star, but we also got to recognize that he also still kind of makes some rookie mistakes sometimes. I'd see sometimes him doing ego challenges when he could be shouldering just to get information. Yeah. I believe there was a classic swing map on Moscow S&D in map 5 against FaZe in the losers final, where him and I believe Kleenex should have had a little bit more coordination when they challenged what's his name?
I forget the player who they were challenging. Celium.
And lost a 2v1 versus them. Those are some, I guess, areas where you could see a little bit of improvement. And then just on the teamwork level, this is something that I really, really I saw was an issue before, but it looked like we kind of solved it, which shows great adaptability, was being able to deal with flanks.
Yeah,
I believe that genuinely lost us a ton of maps, especially against FaZe and kind of against Optic, but then we fixed it against Optic and was able to beat them.
Yeah, the flanks were definitely giving us trouble. You saw Abizi went on a couple flanks, was able to get some picks. Envoy was hitting some great flanks against us.
Envoy is killing it.
It was a pretty consistent thing. And I do think that, again, as it went on, we started to adapt a little bit more to it. So I think that's clearly going to be something that this team goes back to the drawing board and tries to figure out. I do think you saw a team start to figure out their playstyle a little bit. I think I saw FaZe especially become more aware of, the ratty plays that Bance likes to make. Yes. I think you saw teams become a little bit more aware of our search and destroy strategies. And that's what happens when you go from winning the major to finishing first in your group stages, right? Teams are going to start to pay more attention. We talked about that possibility going into the stage. And we're finally starting to see it. But honestly, I was worried that it would show itself earlier on, and maybe Ultra would have a harder time adapting. But at the very least, that they finish first in their stage, they get top 3, so they're clearly showing that even if teams are adapting more to their styles, they can still pull out victories. And now it's time for them to pull the old Uno reverse card, and so to look at how teams are countering them and then counter it right back. So I have no doubt that
Interesting strategies.
yeah, no team's perfect. So if it sounds like we're nitpicking, it's because we are. Again, overall, an amazing play of Call of Duty. I think Cammy, once again, showing why he's legitimately in the conversation for the MVP right now. One of the best players in the world. I think that he had some massive plays, especially during Optic. Like when I looked at that Optic game, I think of Cammy clutching the 5th map on Control when he gets the streaks and almost like single-handedly wins the 5th round on Raid Control. And then I also think of him going off in that final search and destroy and getting streaks again at a crucial map 10, map 11, and helping us close that out. Like, talk about clutch. CleanX's movements, better than ever. Like, I love the way that he plays the aggression around the map. And even when he is getting slayed and maybe he's not putting up the numbers that you want to see, he's like, he doesn't stop. You know what I mean? Like, some players, I feel like that could get in their head.
Yeah.
Always pushes forward, and Insight being as stable as ever, and Ban still, being the rowdy Bans and trying to make those plays. So, and you can hear in the columns, right? Ban's just leading the way. So I think that the team, ton of momentum going into stage 4, and I'm very excited to see how they do on LAN.
Yeah, and just one other, I think, comment as to a thing that I really liked that they changed in their play style to throughout this major series was on Raid S&D B retakes.
Yeah.
So we see this very, very classic strategy that they use every time when they play Raid. And it's actually evolved over time. They used to just, I think, rush. But now they go take B site and basically push up to have laundry control. And I think it's called Zig control. I'm not quite exactly sure of the spots.
Terminology.
And one of the big issues that we noticed when they were playing against FaZe in their first game, in their first kind of game in this major, was the fact that they were pretty poorly executing retake challenges. So they're being challenged by FaZe and retake, and by now they're the best team in the league, so it's a little hard to be skewing them.
Yeah.
But they were failing pretty hard when they're attempting retakes. I think they did a lot better against Optic in being able to challenge the Optic retake on those types of strategies.
Yeah, listen, like I said, I agree, and there is improvements, and I think that they still have room to improve going into the next stage. And I said going in, I think they beat the teams that they needed to beat, and they lost to the teams, and I'm okay with them losing to as long as they were competitive, and they were competitive, right? Like, I'll come on here and I'll criticize the team when I feel like they deserve it, and this was not one of those cases, so nothing but overall positivity coming away from that matchup as a whole. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what this team is capable of going into stage 4, and obviously ideally going into LAN especially. And we'll probably do an episode on how I think this team will do on LAN. I think it's a conversation worth having. But I'm very optimistic about their performances on LAN. I know some people in the community maybe a little bit less so, but we'll see. But regardless, yeah, great performance overall, and just a great tournament overall. I think that it was one of the best majors that we've witnessed to. Obviously, the one where Ultra won would be my personal favorite, but in terms of creating storylines, like you had a team like Florida come out there and I think surprised a lot of people. And I mean, I know that I say surprised. I know they went out of the tournament by losing 6 straight maps, but for them to get that 3-1 victory over LA Thieves, I think was very impressive. Obviously, I think the team of the tournament was Optic, and finally shutting up a lot of people who were, I think, undeservedly criticizing them. I know they had a rough stage 3, but this team was always, I think, a threat. Right? They just had so much talent that you knew when push come to shove, they could get hot and make a run like this, and that's exactly what we saw. To go through some very talented teams in the way that they did and look as talented and as on point as they were. And again, the New York team that we said was a team to watch going into stage 3 was exactly that. Finished first in their group.
So right about that.
Yeah, get all the way to the finals, and yeah, they end up dropping to FaZe, 5-2, but they beat them the first time, which is something that Toronto Ultra couldn't do. So overall, a lot of very interesting teams. London finally showed some life. Obviously, like I said, I think Minnesota was the big one that stuck out to me as going down 3 straight to London was pretty surprising. But other than that, a lot of I think teams came right from this with a positive outlook. Maybe not LA Thieves, but I'm very excited for that team going into the next stage. I think they can figure it out.
Yep, I agree with that. Now let's move on to the last thing. I guess Minnesota just recently made a change. In light of this, kind of poor performance in stage 3.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, Spencer.
I like it. Listen, do I think this is going to reinvent the wheel and Minnesota is going to be, going to the grand finals of stage 4? I don't. But I think it improves the team. And that's nothing against accuracy. I think it's just gassing at MajorManiak. I thought MajorManiak was a really big piece in the offseason. I thought picking up him and Priesta was a fantastic core to build around, right? That is a core of one of the best teams in the league last year, which was the that FaZe roster. And now obviously, you think of the FaZe roster, you do think of like Simple BZ Cilium. But like, let's not sleep on what MajorManiak and Priesta were bringing to that team, right? Like, they were still very key components of that. So you have two ARs like that to build your core around. The sub duo of Attach and Standy, I'm still not sure if I love the fit. I think the talent is absolutely there. I think both those players are very talented. I still think that you started to see teams kind of figure out their ratty play styles in this major. That's maybe one of the reasons why they had a little bit of a shaky stage 3 and then even worse major. But if they can figure out that team chemistry, I really like that team on paper, and I think that is definitely a dark horse team. I love what MajorManiak did was he got benched, and instead of sitting there and just, tweeting about it all day and night, he went to Challengers, he grinded, and he saw results. Like, if you watched him play in Challengers, he was frying. His team was winning. I don't know if they won. I think they came second. Anyways, they were seeing success, and he was, like, putting up some pretty good numbers about it, too. So I think this improves the team. I think it rounds up their S&D, and I think they're going to be a sneaky dark horse team going into the next major. I don't know if they're in that top 4 echelon potential, but I think they're a good team. I think it improves them.
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to be staying out of in the top 8. So really glad to see that.
They'll be there. I think they'll be a top 8 team as well. I think this kind of solidifies that. And again, it's nothing against accuracy. Lamar had his moments for sure, but I think it's more just about MajorManiak. I think bringing that pace and maybe fitting that roster a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, guys, look at it. If you like what you hear, please leave us a like and subscribe to the main esports channel. If you disagree with what we said, or just have a comment, let us know. We love talking with you guys.
Yep. And my last little tidbit, there's rumors that Afro, his visa was finally approved. So I do think that London could be a potential sneaky team going into this next major as well. But we'll preview that on our next video. So as always, guys, if you're interested in that, stay tuned for next week. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching, and enjoy.